They were in the labyrinth, safe for now. The walls around them seemed to breathe, the dim light casting eerie shadows that danced with every flicker of their torches. He could feel the weight of her against him, hear her ragged breathing. Each breath was a reminder of the relentless chase they had endured, the fear that had gripped them for so long. They had been running for what felt like an eternity. Every twist and turn of the labyrinth had been a test of their endurance, their will to survive. The silence of the maze was almost as unnerving as the chase had been. It was a silence that spoke of hidden dangers, of threats lurking just out of sight. He knew they weren't safe. Not really. The maze was a temporary refuge, a brief respite in their ongoing struggle. Not while young Ilhu was still out there, the shadowy figure that haunted their steps. The relentless pursuer who would stop at nothing to capture them.
We need to keep moving. His voice was gentle but firm, a mix of urgency and reassurance.
Her touch sent a jolt of warmth through him. It was a small comfort, a reminder of the bond they shared, the strength they drew from each other. He wouldn't let anything happen to her. His resolve was unshakable, his determination a shield against the fear that threatened to overwhelm them. He wouldn't let Ilhu take her too. The thought of losing her was unbearable, a nightmare he refused to entertain. They would escape this nightmare together. Their bond was their strength, their hope a beacon in the darkness. He had to believe that. Belief was all they had left, a fragile thread that kept them moving forward, step by step, through the labyrinth of their fears. A cold wind swept through the labyrinth. Doyuk's blood ran cold. He knew that feeling, that oppressive aura. Young Ilhu was close. His eyes scanned the maze, searching for any sign of movement. The air crackled with tension. He could practically taste the fear in his mouth.
Running again, Doyuk? You can't hide forever.
Ilhu took a step forward, his shadow stretching out like a living thing. Doyuk pushed Yuri behind him, his body a shield between her and the monster that was young Ilhu. He wouldn't let him hurt her, not while he still drew breath. The first blow came out of nowhere, a blur of motion, a flash of steel. It was as if the very air had turned against him, slicing through the silence with deadly intent. Do-hyuk barely had time to raise his sword in defense. His instincts kicked in, muscles reacting faster than his mind could process the danger. The clang of metal on metal was deafening. The clash of metal echoed through the labyrinth, a symphony of violence that reverberated off the cold stone walls. Each strike was a note in a deadly composition. The force of the blow sent shockwaves through his arm, numbing his fingers. He could feel the vibrations travel up to his shoulder, threatening to disarm him with each powerful strike. He staggered back, his breath catching in his throat. Every gasp of air felt like fire in his lungs, but he couldn't afford to show weakness. Not now. He had faced countless enemies, overcome impossible odds. Each scar on his body was a testament to battles fought and won, but this was different. But young Ilhu was different. He wasn't just another adversary, he was a force to be reckoned with, a living embodiment of power and precision. His strength was monstrous, overwhelming. Each swing of his sword felt like it could cleave mountains, and his presence alone was enough to instill fear. Every movement was precise, controlled. There was no wasted effort, no unnecessary flourish. It was as if he had mastered the very essence of combat. He fought like a force of nature, unstoppable and unrelenting. Each attack was like a wave crashing against the shore, relentless and powerful. Fear threatened to consume him, a dark cloud looming over his resolve. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat a reminder of the stakes. But he pushed it down. He had to. There was no room for fear in this battle, no space for doubt. He had to be stronger than his fear. He couldn't afford to hesitate, not now. Every second counted, every decision could mean the difference between life and death. He had to fight. For Yuri, for himself, for everyone who depended on him. The weight of their hopes and dreams rested on his shoulders. For any hope of a future free from this nightmare, a future where they could live without fear, without the constant threat of violence. That was the world he was fighting for. The labyrinth became a whirlwind of steel and fury. The air was thick with the sound of clashing metal, each strike echoing through the twisted corridors. It was a battleground where only the strongest could hope to survive, and the stakes were higher than ever. Each strike from Ilhu was a thunderclap, a powerful reminder of his strength and skill. His movements were precise, each swing of his sword calculated to bring his opponent to their knees. each parry a desperate act of survival. Doyuk's arms ached with the effort, his muscles screaming in protest as he fought to keep up with Ilhu's relentless assault. He knew that one wrong move could mean the end. Doyuk danced around him, a leaf caught in a hurricane. His agility was his only advantage, allowing him to evade the worst of Ilhu's attacks. But he couldn't keep this up forever. He couldn't overpower him, he knew that. Ilhu was a giant, a force of nature that couldn't be stopped by sheer strength alone. Dohyuk had to be smarter, quicker, more resourceful. His only hope was to outmaneuver him, to use his speed and wits to find an opening in Ilhu's defenses. He had to stay one step ahead, always thinking, always planning, to find an opening in his relentless assault. It was like trying to find a needle in a haystack, but Doyuk had no other choice. He had to keep moving, keep fighting, keep hoping. Every breath was a victory, a small triumph in the face of overwhelming odds. Each gasp of air fueled his determination, giving him the strength to continue, every swing of his sword a testament to his will. He fought with everything he had, pouring his heart and soul into each strike. He couldn't afford to hold back, not now. But the fight was taking its toll. His body was weary, his movements growing sluggish. The weight of the battle pressed down on him, threatening to crush his spirit. Fatigue gnawed at his muscles, his movements growing sluggish. Each step felt like a monumental effort, each swing of his sword a Herculean task. Despair threatened to pull him under, to drown him in the darkness. It whispered in his ear, telling him to give up, to let go, to accept defeat, to drown him in the darkness. But Doyuk refused to listen. He couldn't afford to give in to despair, not when so much was at stake. He caught a glimpse of Yuri's face, pale and drawn. Her eyes were wide with fear, her expression a mirror of his own inner turmoil. Her eyes were filled with a terror that mirrored his own. She was counting on him, relying on him to protect her, to save her from this nightmare. He couldn't let her down. He had to find the strength to keep fighting, to keep pushing forward, no matter the cost. He had to find a way to win, even if it cost him everything. He couldn't let this monster take her from him, not while he still had breath in his body. He would not let this monster take her from him. He would fight to his last breath, give everything he had to ensure her safety. Not while he still had the strength to fight. He would stand his ground, face the darkness head on, and emerge victorious. For Yuri, for himself, for everything they had fought for.